Sabrina 70s comic issue 34. Sabrina says Harvey's early for their movie date and she hasn't gotten ready. He says he'll think of something to do to pass the time, and decides to watch TV. He says, "I think there's a good comedy show on now called Depression." These writers are geniuses. I'm really smiling at how silly that line was. That was too good. But seriously, no one would call the comedy show Depression. Harvey wants to fix himself a little snack. Hilda goes up to her house saying, "What a day I had, zapping all those dumb mortals getting in my way shopping." That's so her. She somehow hasn't eaten since breakfast. And she gets mad at Harvey because he ate so many meals in a row, including a 6-pack of Cokes. And she says, "Aren't you afraid your stomach will explode?" Harvey laughs and says that she has a great sense of humor. Well, that was an amusing quip of hers. She casts a spell to make Harvey get fatter by the second. He tells Sabrina that he doesn't want to explode. It was so predictable that he'd run into trouble because he stayed in Sabrina's house longer than he had to. Why doesn't he learn his lesson? Is his own house that terrible? Sabrina immediately reverses the spell, and he doesn't question it at all, and just says he'll skip the burger and fries after the show and go on a diet. I'd be impressed with the comic if he actually followed through with this for the rest of the comic. But it'd be realistic if he didn't. How does anyone have an appetite that big without being a binge eater? At least we finally got to see what would happen if Hilda succeeded in casting a spell on him that would make him fatter. Because she tried that before, and it backfired because of Sabrina stopping her, and she got fat. But it had to be reversed immediately because there's nowhere the story could go after that. In the comedy page, some tough guys kick sand at Harvey, and one of them laughs. I've seen this cliche so many times. Does this actually happen? Because I've only seen this exaggerated nonsense in fiction, but it has to have happened at some point if it's become a thing. I don't remember ever going to the beach though. Sabrina gets revenge by casting a spell to make the driver of a dump truck say musingly, "Suddenly I got this strange urge to go to the beach." Is the dialogue in this comic getting a lot funnier? The story ends with them dumping all of the slop on the tough guys. And I giggle at one of them saying, "What the?" So isn't the trucker gonna get in trouble for this? Wouldn't this get him fired? In the next story, Sabrina feels sorry for a lost kid that's crying. I immediately wonder if there's gonna be a twist and he's actually manipulating her and evil. I wonder why. Maybe it's because the stories are so short and there's tons of them in one issue. So the story is so fast-paced that it's reminding me of Sonic the Comic. So if I see a new character, I assume it has to be the new villain, and the twist is around the new character. But logically, it's probably just what it looks like. Sabrina sends Harvey to look around the neighborhood to see what he can find out, and brings him into her house in the meantime. He asks for ice cream and cake, and she says that she doesn't have any in the house. Couldn't she zap some up right away? I wish she explained in a thought bubble that she really wants him to eat healthy instead, even when he's having a bad day. He turns down a bologna sandwich and milk and demands the dessert, so she immediately gives in. To be fair, he's a lost kid, so he's got every reason to be upset and want some ice cream, and she's got every reason to pity him. You'd expect her to have given him some right away, but I'm wondering why the writer is making the lost kid that we're supposed to feel sorry for into a tantruming brat. It's turning us against him early. Sabrina warns him not to wake up Hilda because she's not feeling well, and she confuses him as she points at the bowl and a zap sound happens, and she asks if that's enough. I guess she assumes that she can use magic in front of him because he's too young to be scared and no one would ever believe it. But, too young to be scared? Then he asks for some jelly beans, lollipops, and soda as well. He has had a bad day, but I'm starting to wonder if this is why his parents left him alone. He tantrums and Sabrina gives in instead of brainwashing him into being polite or at least a healthy eater. Because the girl who cast a love spell on Archie in her first issue is above brainwashing. He asked her out, she zapped up some lollipops. And that's the end of that. As she just warns him that if he keeps eating like that, he'll be sick to his stomach. I guess she assumes that when he remembers her using magic, he'll just assume that he made it up. Harvey tells Sabrina that he found the mother looking for him a couple of blocks back. It turns out that he does this once a week until someone would take him home and give him ice cream and cake. Wow, he's really lucky that no one kidnapped him. He's really lucky the worst didn't happen. You'd think that sooner or later she would give him the talk about that. I guess she's too much of a wuss. The story ends with Harvey and Sabrina actually impressed with him instead, with Sabrina saying that she never met a 5-year-old con man before. So I was right about him. I assumed he was being manipulated on purpose, and I was actually right. Oh man, is the comic as predictable as Sonic the Comic? Well, fortunately no, because you never know what exact spell is going to be done next. And plenty of plots have some shocking swerves. At least the comic's predictable because it's being logical sometimes. In the comedy page, a door-to-door salesman offers Hilda a product that makes women beautiful, which she's tried. And he says that she'd better reorder, and gets turned into a frog for it. And his reaction is completely unrealistic. So, is he a witch too? That's the only explanation. In the next comedy page, Harvey wants some chocolate custard, but somehow, Sabrina decides to have him swimming in the stuff. And, oh good, it turns out she didn't mean it literally. Like it wouldn't put past her at this point. So he ends up in a pool of it, which will require a lot of people's memories to be erased to cover it up. I wish I got to see him eat some of the custard instead of just having a pool of it. The story ends with Sabrina saying that she wishes the spirit world wouldn't take her so literally. Again with referencing spirits. At least I kinda know where our magic comes from now. So the spirits put magic in a battery, and every witch has one in their body. I like that the comic tries to explain things better when it doesn't have to. That's admirable, because the writer doesn't have to put that much effort into it. But it can't decide whether the witches are mechanical with the magic battery in them that can malfunction and needs fine-tuning. I mean, that seems kind of at odds with them getting it from the spirit world, but I guess spirits are able to make technology. In the next story, Sabrina's polite enough to say that it's a nice surprise to see a mean-looking old lady around here. She says that she goes food shopping at the new supermarket down the street because you get good buys there. Why is her text bubble pink? It was hard for me to read what she was saying at first. It doesn't help that some of it is more dark pink than the others, and the text is black. And for no reason whatsoever, Sabrina has the stupid idea that she should have her meet Hilda. Why? She should at least say it's because they're both old ladies. Sabrina tells Hilda that she's in charge of the cafeteria and she wants them to become very close friends. So that probably is her reasoning. I guess she thinks it would be good for Hilda to get a friend. But I'm guessing that they won't become good friends because Hilda is who she is, and that would change the status quo for even a few issues. So we can't have that. It's sweet of Hilda to be excited at the idea of getting a friend. She's not always a mean grump. Sadly, it's even worse than I thought because they hate each other immediately. Hilda's the one who tipped over her shopping cart at the market the other day and made her bust up a dozen eggs in a container of milk. Hilda says that she got all over her clothes because she walks around with her eyes closed and ran in front of her. She gets mad at being called an idiot. Shouldn't it be obvious it's Hilda's fault? Hilda's fashion sense is insulted. Surprisingly, Hilda gets kicked first, so she kicks her out. Sabrina complains, that turned out to be one of the shortest friendships in history. It didn't even start. It's realistic that this happened. It was even foreshadowed because Hilda said she zapped mortals while shopping. But I can't help but feel bad for Hilda that she'll never get a friend outside her family. In the comedy page, Zelda asks if she could borrow some water from Hilda's neighbors. First off, Hilda's neighbors, so she's not living with Hilda. That explains a lot, and it's more realistic than two sisters living together. Also, I guess she doesn't mean water bottles, because I'm sure Hilda would have plenty of those. The story ends with Hilda of all people telling Zelda off for abusing her magic, telling her to put the pool water back right away. Zelda just wanted to swim in it. And I'm guessing the reason she's telling Zelda off is because if they kept the water cube around too long, it'd blow their cover, and Della would get mad at them. Why didn't Zelda just brainwash the neighbors into letting her swim in their pool? And forget witches, I find it harder to believe that anyone would swim with their clothes on. What's the point of Zelda if she's gonna act just like Hilda? And I don't mean clothes as in bathing suit, or even a long one-piece bathing suit. I mean like that. In the next story, Ambrose whispers to Sabrina that they'll discuss it later because Hilda's here. And he lies that they weren't talking. I'm guessing that rather than reality ensuing and them just insulting Hilda behind her back or even wanting to stage an intervention, it's really about a secret birthday party. After all, this is a lighthearted kids comic, though it's not afraid to get mean-spirited apparently. Hilda gets mad at Zelda as well and asks who she was talking to quietly on the phone. She says that she was talking to an old friend she wouldn't know, and Hilda gets mad at someone keeping a secret from her. Then she asks what Harvey and Sabrina are whispering about. This plot is repetitive. Why have the same thing happen 3 times if it's not funny? Predictably, they're planning our birthday party for tomorrow. Too bad we'll probably never get to see it. That would make for a more interesting story than this. I mean, anything's an interesting story when witches are involved, and they actually use their magic. The first story is about Harvey eating too much of Hilda's food, and as revenge for his impossible appetite out of nowhere, she makes him start ballooning up, even though she could just zap up replacements for any food he eats anyways. So Sabrina undoes the spell and wants to go on a diet. I was interested at the premise of him showing up too early for a date, because since when does that ever happen? I wanted to see how he'd screwed up. But in the end, he could have done this plot at any time. The second story, as I correctly predicted, was about a supposedly lost kid trying too hard to be sad and manipulate Sabrina just to get a bunch of sweets for himself. It turns out he does this all the time. Enough said. He was tedious, but I liked how accepting he was of Sabrina's magic and how it had no consequences, which you never see in the show. So it's exciting. The third story is about the cafeteria worker hating Hilda right away after Sabrina makes her meet her in a desperate attempt to give Hilda a friend. Hilda did something to make her hate her already. We didn't even get to see them have a conversation and try to be friends first. That was too fast. And the fourth story is way too repetitive. Hilda gets mad at her family members for whispering around her until she finally gets told that, of course, they're just planning her birthday party. I'm sure she knew her birthday was coming up, and you'd think this exact scenario would have happened before. But with the way she behaves, it makes sense that she'd assume they were insulting her. But maybe if they really were gonna stage an intervention, it'd be a more interesting story, where stuff happens.